Welcome to Empire Building. I'm Wendy Papazan, and together with my 4 co-hosts, we bring you weekly unfiltered conversations about leadership, growing a big empire, and living on your own terms.
I'm Kimber Levitt-Keaty. We are investors and wealth builders with over $75 million in combined net worth.
I'm Sarah Reynolds. We are visionaries who built more than 50 businesses with over $122 million in annual revenue.
I'm Tiffany Fikes. We've led thousands of people and do it all while being pretty good moms.
And I'm Seychelle Van Poole. We are your podcast to learn how to build big businesses and even bigger lives.
Hey everybody, it's Wendy and Kimber here with you today. Hi Kimber, so nice to see you.
Hey Wendy, it's always good to see you. And I'm excited for this chat.
Me too, I'm excited about our conversation. So I was actually playing around with AI the other day, and I decided to ask ChatGPT a powerful question for a class that I'm teaching. And I asked ChatGPT, I said, how to make money if you're a woman? And honestly, the results were quite astounding to me. I shouldn't be surprised, but it was pretty shocking. And so the inherent bias in the language, because of course, ChatGPT is just taking information from the web and things like that. And this is what ChatGPT suggested to this empire builder, which was to set realistic financial goals, to develop a savings mentality, to read up on it, to start saving for retirement, to work with a professional, budget like a pro, wealth creation requires consistency, which is true. Ignore the haters, save money for emergencies and holidays, and put money in an education fund for your children. And those are all, it's all pretty good advice. However, I got really curious.
Yeah, you were like, is this universal? It does seem very conservative and very right? It's a long game. Those were all very, very valid, but all
risk averse.
Very risk adverse, right? Very safe. You're not going to become a multi-millionaire, billionaire probably with those strategies, but you'd have a good little, you'd be okay.
Yeah. So then when I asked ChatGPT how to make money if you're a man, here's what I found. Invest in yourself first. Create multiple streams of income. Make your money work for you. Give back. Start and run a successful business. Get lucky with startups. Go into a lucrative career.
Wow. Not even a single one that even overlapped with the first one.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that crazy? So, the reality of our gender biased world it's pretty shocking. It's still pretty shocking. And I think all of us walk around with these unconscious gender biases inside of us. And, for some of us, it holds us back,
Yeah, but I look at how early those gender roles and support and leverage are taught, right from the very, very beginning. And so this conservative nature of because I looked at that first list and that's 100% how I was taught, right? Be realistic, work hard, get on a budget.
Get a steady job.
Yeah. And get a professional, somebody else who's going to know more. Likely a guy is going to advise you on what to do with your money.
Yeah.
So different.
Yeah, exactly.
So we need to change that. We
need to change that. Yeah.
Build wealth like a man.
We need to build wealth like a man. Yeah. Well, and, women in wealth building, I think we think a lot about that. I think about that book where it was the latte factor or something like that, which I always thought was so crazy. I remember reading that book and thinking this is insane advice. No one's going to become really wealthy by not spending $6 on a coffee. And that book was very much geared towards women.
100%.
I don't know if you read it, but that was 100% geared towards women. And so it's you're not going to save your way to financial freedom.
That's right. Well, and we're often encouraged, taught early to prioritize saving and even the risk, right? I know for me and a lot of the women that we work with and consult, they also there's a nest egg, right? the idea of risk. So they want to see a certain amount, open up the bank account and see a certain amount. And I think that goes back to prioritizing savings, prioritizing financial security over risk-taking. And I think even in our business that we own together, right, Wendy, like we just by doing something really small in how we leveraged our savings account, because we also wanted to have reserves, wanted to be protected, but we made an extra $15,000 just by being smart about where we parked the reserve money. That would have gained nothing, right? So just we are taught very early on to prioritize saving and financial security over that risk-taking. Have an emergency fund, make sure you have a stable income, right? Like how many dual career in the real estate field, because a lot of women, like they're prioritizing, they do not want to give up that income, even as these businesses that they've created start to significantly eclipse and they're running themselves crazy, but they're taught like, don't give up that like good, stable income. And we're less frequently encouraged to invest, take financial risk, invest in business. I think both stereotypes, risk aversion, and I think women are more likely to tell you what they don't know. I know I sometimes would get in a room with our male development team, and they pretend like they know and they play along. And the women are much more transparent when they don't know the acronyms that they're using or the words they're using. And so I think feel intimidated when the reality is that the guy sitting across from you, he doesn't know either. He was just pretending like he did.
Yeah.
And so they show up ready for an opportunity, or an opportunity gets presented to them because they were kind of playing a game that we were actually just being way more transparent about. Like, what does that mean? What is triple net? Like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah. What's EBITDA? Mm-hmm. It took me like 3 years to finally figure out what that acronym is. So,
and they say it with such ease, and then you're like, "What? Say that again?"
Yeah,
yeah. So the intimidation to even take the step to make an investment when you're like, "I don't know what that means."
Yeah, for sure. And I think women are often pushed into lower paying careers. You know, you think about nursing, think about teaching. And then, you know, the discussion you and I were having before we started recording today was this idea of, you know, deprioritizing your earnings in favor of work-life balance or caregiving roles or things like that. And I just had a really good conversation with Ryan Major. We interviewed her for the podcast. So we were talking about how we both took, when our kids were young, we took those 5 years off, and how in my mind, I thought it was a gift to me. And it was a gift to me. I loved spending that time with my kids. It was a wonderful gift. And what nobody talks about is really this gift that the other spouse is given in order to sort of run towards their career without worrying about anything that's happening at home. You know, Jay would come home and everything was buttoned up. Not that he didn't help. I mean, for sure, he did help. He was a huge help. He's a great husband and a great dad. And he didn't have to worry about waiting for a plumber if something was wrong or, you know, all of that kind of stuff. And that's true when your parents are sick and dying too. Most of the time, you know, women are stepping in and doing those kind of caregiving roles at the end of life. And that's rough. That can be rough. I actually was reading something about, I don't know, I probably saw it on like Instagram or something, but this woman was talking about how when she was doing the math, you know, it was just as much to pay for childcare as it was to, you know, basically work. It was kind of an even split.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which everybody hears all the time, and everybody kind of, that's like a thing that encourages women to stay home. But what her perspective is she's like, if I stay at home for the next 5 years, my potential future earnings have gone down significantly because I've taken a huge chunk of time out of the workforce. And you just don't hear, like, when have you ever heard anyone say that before?
Yeah. I mean, the time that you're out of the workforce and the skill that you develop as a professional, like the knowledge, I think about today, I think we're probably in the prime in a lot of ways, right? Both in a challenging to be the prime at this season in terms of also just how society judges age, right? When you sort of age out of being that validity, which you actually have a ton more experience, but the experience that you gain, part of why I think you're in that prime today is that you've learned enough because you've been in the professional world enough, right? So you have this combination of energy, stamina, confidence, knowledge, right? That creates that ability to really maximize that. And if you're 5 or 10 years behind, you haven't gained some of that like basic to know what EBITDA is, right? Like to be able to know what those things are. You haven't gained that yet.
Yeah, that's so wise. And then once you roll into your 50s, often your parents are sick and dying. So then again, you might be taking out a chunk of time for one or both parents. And then you look up in your 60s, which is really, your 50s are kind of your peak earning years. And if you're taking years out of your life there, caretaking for your family, that's hard. And, I don't think we're saying we shouldn't do it. I think we're saying like there's a tax that happens, and it's primarily a tax that happens to women.
Well, what's interesting is like the correlation between like what you're saying, like the place women who are often having to multitask, right? Whether you're working outside the home or you're the primary person inside the home, the actual like when you go back to that list, invest in yourself first, creating multiple streams of income, which is all about that leverage. Make your money work for you. Get lucky with a startup. Those are all leveraged things that actually almost buy back your time.
Yes.
So the women who actually have less time in the work world to make their money work for them are actually taught, go do the things that are actually going to set you even further back. Or if you put some of those other skills, like strategies, it actually allows you today, right? I think both of us have had the benefit because we've invested in other businesses. We have additional passive streams of income that creates more choice when a life event happens that does require you to need to go focus on something else. You aren't then having to choose of financially supporting your family or financially, emotionally, right, supporting your family. And it's interesting when you look back at that list, it double advises women, right? The skills that we're telling them we're taught actually like are in conflict with the commitments and obligations that a lot of times we have as women.
Yeah. And, it goes without saying that men and wealth building, the priorities are totally different. Take a calculated risk, become an entrepreneur.
Negotiate for your value, right? Like
negotiate for your value.
Yeah.
I bet if I did a Google image search of entrepreneur, you know how you can do like a Google image search and just put in entrepreneur, I bet 90% of the pictures would be men.
Even wealth builder.
Yeah. Somebody tell me I'm wrong.
Yes. Tell us. You can send us a note. You can DM us and let us know.
Yeah.
But I think these like even financial discussions and the prioritization of just the generation of income over saving are more significant. They're taught more to like over stability, like go make an investment, go double down on something, go like take the risk. Like they're encouraged both in their own professional ventures and with their money to go take the risk. They feel more pressure to have to go earn the wealth for their family, but also to go build it, to go do the thing and blow it up. And maybe somebody, if you've got the resources, will help bail you out if you took a big risk and it didn't work out.
Yeah. Well, and just I think historically men have had greater access to financial mentorships, networks, resources, playing golf, it's a very stereotypical but true sort of trope where men go out and they talk about finances on the golf course. And truth be told, I played golf until I had children.
Well, because isn't it like 4 to 6 hours? Like, I'm like,
it's like 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
Once you have kids, like who's got time for that? Yeah, literally, who's got time for it? And, I don't think women really do.
And yet, what we know is that while that feels like a social thing, right, Wendy, it's actually where a lot of business gets done. So the mentorship, the conversations, what to invest in, what new ideas somebody's got going on, what other side business did they invest in, that's where a lot of those conversations are happening. And so if you're not in them, even if you're in the right field, if you're not in the out-of-the-room conversations, then chances are you missed where somebody was investing their money outside of the boardroom.
Yep, that's so true. And then I asked ChatGPT another question. I said, how can women quickly earn money? And again, the results were so interesting. Part-time gigs, obviously, odd jobs, virtual assistants. So I guess to become a virtual assistant is what they suggested.
Because you could be at home and, work for somebody else.
Yeah, blogging, also home. Affiliate marketing, also at home. Online surveys, focus groups, and social media sponsorships. So that was what ChatGPT said. And then, this is crazy, I asked, it's actually not even true. This isn't how you quickly earn money, man or woman. But I said, how do you quickly earn money as a man? And they said, ChatGPT said, the most likely path for men to build wealth quickly involves starting a successful business in a high demand market, coupled with smart investing in high potential assets while managing expenses carefully and maximizing income streams. This often requires a combination of entrepreneurial skills, market knowledge, calculated risk-taking, and financial discipline.
I just want to point out how the very first one for women was part-time gigs. And like the depth, right or wrong, like just the idea of like, oh, you want to earn some extra money? Let me give you some pocket change. And you want to earn some extra money as a man? Like, here's how you could take some risk and build some wealth. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy. So yeah, I mean, and it kind of goes on and on. It even says like invest in high growth potential sectors with significant upside potential, which that's not how you make money quickly anyway.
No, it isn't.
That is what people are learning and being taught. So like that unconscious bias is just so powerful, and we feel it as women. I can remember. I was actually at our Her Best Life event, and we had done that breakout. So I had that mastermind, and I think it was like, I called it like Rich Bitches Only or something like that. And it was an amazing, amazing mastermind. And it culminated with Lily West, shout out Lily if you're listening, raising her hand and talking about a big development opportunity that she had. And what was so interesting is in her mind, even though she had the market knowledge, the expertise, the drive, the ambition, and the networks to actually be the developer, in her mind, she wanted to partner with somebody else who would help her with that. And during the mastermind, all this amazing group of women in the room convinced her to really go for it. And as far as I know, she did go for it. I kind of followed up with her a few times. But like that just goes to show how we're just so, even though, we're our own worst enemy in so many ways as women, because we too have that gender bias.
I know. It's so true. Well, and you think about like where are women, which this to me is like a crazy stat and one that we all need to be both paying attention to, leaning into, right? So there's 7 million female millionaires in the United States, right? Women billionaires in 2024, in this last year, there were 369 women billionaires, which is 13.3, right? 13% of the total billionaire population, 13% were women, which is up from 337. So it's increasing, but still under 20%, under 15% of the women. And the United States had the most. The most were based in the United States with 119, so almost half, right? Or almost a third. And then China, Germany, and Italy. What I think is also interesting, if you're talking to any of like financial planners, people, like the highest segment of who is going to control wealth, the biggest transfers of wealth are happening between men and women, because you've got more women that are passing away earlier, they're losing their spouses, in divorces. Women are controlling a lot more wealth. So you're seeing a lot of, like my financial planner who we've been with for 20 years, for the first time this year, did his like female session, because he was watching his client base really evolve and women being more in control of money. So from like you talk about what's good business practice.
Women just live longer than men, right?
Yeah.
So that makes sense. They live on average 6 or 7 years longer than men. So I think about, my husband's parents. He was kind of the decision maker. And then when he died, she was very much a decision maker. And he was the financial decision maker in a lot of ways. And that was just, a lot of marriages are that way. And now she's had to learn a lot in the last few years since he's passed away. And it's been pretty scary for her,
Well, imagine doing that in your 70s or your 80s. I mean, I have similar with my mother-in-law, having to literally not have had to thought about this for her entire life. And then now in her 80s, having to try to learn, get advisors on it. So I think what we're seeing in this trend, which I think is really powerful, is more women are controlling the wealth in the United States and in the world, really being able to take some of these practices that are helping your money multiply and be protected. I think it's how do you combine, right, some of those both conservative skills that I think helped us like save and invest and give at a significant level, and also build and optimize the wealth that you're creating.
Yep. Well, and the number of female millionaires has grown. So it's growing at a rate that's almost double than male millionaires. So kudos to you wealth builders out there and you female empire builders. We're rooting for you.
That's right. And you're growing, right? I love that. There were almost like over 40,000 female ultra high net worth individuals. Like kind of wild.
What is that, like 30 million?
30 million,
yeah, 30 million
in assets.
Yeah, that's goals.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. But how do you really understand. And what I would guarantee, which we know, right? Like they're a lot of self-made, they're coming into it, and they're certainly not using the practice of being a blog, well, maybe being a blogger, but they're not just managing and budgeting well and getting a second side hustle.
Yeah, you're not going to become an ultra high net worth individual by getting a part-time gig.
No, you will not. No, you will not.
I love that. How do we bridge the gap? Like, how do we make sure that we ourselves are thinking about our own unconscious bias? How do we help our daughters? How do we help our sisters? How do we help our nieces? How do we help the other women in our life? How do we help the women on our teams really think about themselves and their ability to become an empire builder differently?
I think one of the things I love, because we hear it a lot, a lot of our listeners are empire builders are women. We also have a lot of men that listen because they are committed to changing that number, right? We've seen that number double, and they have daughters, right? They have women that work for them. And so I think for our male listeners, like, listen for that too, because you're probably taught something that seems really natural for you. Like, of course you would do that. And if you have somebody in your world who's not taking that risk or doesn't see that, like, these are things that you can also do to help bridge that gap. Because I think that's how we get there, is that it happens from both women helping to lift as they climb, but also men helping to support and slow down enough to allow women the same opportunity.
Yeah, it's scary for us. I even think about, watching kids on a playground, and you've got little boys who are encouraged to jump off, do fun things, oh, you're so brave. And then, girls if you really listen on the playground, there's a lot of like, oh, be careful, watch out, don't hurt yourself. All of that sort of risk-taking that boys are naturally encouraged to do, girls just are not.
Yeah. So it's that early, just looking for those early gender bias signs and pushing against them. Like, even just watch yourself, right? This evening, if you've got kids at home, like, what are the things that you say? What are the questions that you ask about the day? What are the things that we encourage, right? Like, get up fast, right? We say that a lot. Like, boys are, you're fine, get up, keep going. Versus like the pulling in and protecting that we oftentimes receive as young girls, even as women, that is actually can hold back in that space.
Yeah. Don't get dirty.
Don't get dirty. I feel like
Don't get dirty. Yeah.
That's right. Present well. Come on, right? That perfectionism starts so early.
Or, I mean, how many times have you gone up to a little girl and told her how pretty she looks, right? Or, I love your dress, or I love your shoes, or I love your bag. Or, women are very much, from a very young age, are genderized to look great, look beautiful, and you're just not going to go up to a little boy and probably say, I love your shoes. You're just not going to do it.
Yeah. And then where does our resource go, right? So then we're making money, and that consuming, which means, right, like, I'm buying the nicer bag, I'm buying that, like, where does that go? Which means there's less resources to save and invest.
And all the time and energy women spend every day to look good. I mean, there's a whole thing on that. So we're not going to go down that road.
We're not going to go there.
It's a whole thing.
It is. I feel like I literally bought back, I wore braids for 6 months, which are definitely coming back into my life. But it was like, I literally bought back so much time. And people are like, doesn't that take so long? And I'm like, yeah, it takes so long for me to sit for one time to do that. And then I just bought back like a month of time that allows me to like do other things that are really powerful. So anyway, that's my hack. All right. So number one, being a student, right? Become a student. Learn about investing. I love that this is where our Net Worth Club comes in. This is a great place if you're looking for a community to really say, how do I actually get focused? Ask. There's no dumb questions, right? You can ask questions and really track it, build it, right? We measure what matters. So start learning about it, read books, podcasts, right? You're listening to this, going into workshops, going into sessions that really talk about financial, like, learning the things and even just basic terms, where to invest, how to make the money, that really also will help you continue to erase the bias and build wealth.
Yeah, because if you're not having those conversations on the golf course, you got to have them somewhere. You need to really put yourself in those rooms where people are having those conversations. And it doesn't have to be a high-level conversation. It actually starts with a low-level conversation about finances. Like, are you keeping more than you earn? That's really what Net Worth Club is about, is like, are you keeping more than you earn, and are you investing the rest, and how are you investing it? It's very simple. It's not easy, but it's very simple. And, when you are reading one financial book, let's say, or listening to one financial podcast a month, let's say, you can look up over the course of a year or 2 years or 5 years, if you've read one book a month over the course of 5 years, then you've read 60 books on finances and wealth building. And that's really powerful. It's really powerful. Well, the next thing we want to do is just become a mentor or role model. So I just think increasing representation of women in finance and wealth building roles. To me, like, two of the most fascinating stories this year have been about Beyonce and Taylor Swift. I loved reading that Taylor Swift made over $2 billion on her tour this year. It's quite remarkable. They're both incredible businesswomen. And what I love about it, they are able to do it still maintaining their quote unquote kind of like femininity. You know what I mean? They're very strong, powerful women, but they're also beautiful and intelligent and very feminine. And I just think more role models like that are, and if you're not really feminine, that's fine too. You know what I mean? But I just love that here they are on these main stages, just showcasing their success night after night. It's wonderful.
It is. And I think this, like, as women who are on that journey, and part of what we've even done on this podcast is really talk about it. Like, you're not talking about it enough. And part of, I think, one of the big disparities is that men are talking about the wins, the losses, what's working, what's not, how they made a little bit of extra money, how they didn't, what they, like, they're having those conversations, and there's not maybe from an ego place, but like they're communicating with each other. And so just our ability to get into rooms where people are having money conversations and wealth building conversations changes your trajectory. It like turns a light on that you didn't even know. And then you're going to look for things differently. So really, whether that's identifying mentors, getting into a room, it's part of as we take the Her Best Life on the road this year, it's one of our commitments to elevate the conversations that we're having in all areas of our wealth, right? Your health, like all the things that are necessary for that, but don't like race towards the conversation, because that's half the battle, to normalize it.
Yeah, I love that. And then if you do own a business or you're in an HR position, identify gender disparities. Look around. One of the things you and I were talking about was this kind of idea of unpaid work inside of, employers that primarily falls on women. So taking notes in meetings, having to put together happy hours or holiday parties or things like that. That takes a lot of time, energy, and that takes you away from sort of these building your career activities that would happen normally in the workplace. And, are you unconsciously asking women in your own business to do stuff like that? Do you yourself have gender bias? And are you being a good leader as far as that goes? So make sure you got policies in place, right?
I love that. Yeah.
Financial planning, compensation.
There you go.
Yeah.
And encourage that. You don't have to be the advisor of it, but just by creating spaces where you bring that in and invite create that open space to come in and to learn more about it. That's a great way to both have it, but then also level up your team, understanding how they can participate in it, learn more about it, whether that's a book club, a net worth club, all are ways in your practices as a business, as an empire builder, to ensure that your team is also building up their empires too.
And then really the last thing that we would say is if you are an empire builder, run towards it. Run towards your big goals. Run towards wanting to make a lot of money, because money is good for the good it can do. Break down some of those societal norms in your own world, whatever that looks like for you in your own business, in your own brokerage, if you're a realtor, in your city, in your community, in your neighborhood moms group, and just break down all of those norms that associate wealth building with gender by just going out there and getting stuff done. So really run towards your big life and run towards that big business.
I love it. Go build some wealth. We're going to retrain ChatGPT to give us better facts. How to build wealth. This podcast is part of that.
Yeah. I love that.
Awesome. Have a great week. Thanks, Wendy.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not KWRI and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.